Today's YouTube video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around to the end and I'm going to tell you all about this amazing website and how it can really help you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Well, we've got some more MR2 content coming for you today. I just stopped off at Crown Performance in Vista, California to pick up some additional fittings that we're going to need for our fuel system. And we're going to begin the plumbing of our fuel and water systems today. So let me get my apron on. It's time to get cracking. All right, guys, so let's kick it off with the fuel system. The Toyota motor has a pretty interesting setup, a lot like the GM setups where you actually have a push to connect fitting down here. It just, you know, pops on and seals really nicely. But the problem is when you're doing a custom setup and you want to run AN fuel line stuff, you have to have a special fitting in order to adapt to that push on. Our friends over at Phoenix Industries actually make that part, the push on connection there, and then it goes to a -6 threaded fitting here on the other end. We're gonna use this to come off of our factory fuel rail, turn it to the side, and then we will put a Works 45-degree fitting, -6 fitting on the end of it, and that will allow us to get back to the fuel tank to create our fuel feed line for the fuel rail. Now this is a returnless system, so we've got a little less plumbing to do. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on that. Okay, now that we have our push-on fitting and our 45-degree Works AN-6 fitting in place, we can now fit up the other side, which unfortunately the adapter that we need to go to the factory fuel line, which is down here. So that guy right there is what we're connecting to our fuel rail. And the female portion of that fitting that will screw onto there and then route up underneath here over to our 45 is a special order part. Crown did not have it in stock, so we're gonna have to wait on that, but I can go ahead and at least get the line sort of plumbed in the right direction. All right, so I've gone ahead and marked it. We really don't need much at all. It's about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet at best. Pretty short, we've got 10 feet, so we've got a bunch of extra that we can use to either on another project or if we need it for somewhere else on the car. So. All right, so now the line is cut. This is our length. So I've got to put a fitting on either end. In doing these lines, what I've learned a lot of times is when you cut them, a lot of the debris from the rubber and the metal that's inside this hose will end up inside. You want to do a good job of flushing these out, because if you leave the debris in there, what's going to happen is upon first startup, this all ends up clogging up your system, or can potentially clog up your system. So we want to make sure that our fuel filter stays nice and clean, so we're going to go ahead and flush these out beforehand to make sure that none of those particles or crap end up in our fuel filter.
A few minutes later.
All right, well, I'm back from the sink where I hosed this out with some fresh water. Now we know we don't have any debris in there and we can start putting our fittings in. If you're gonna be doing this job with any sort of regularity, I highly recommend getting an adjustable aluminum wrench as well as the appropriate aluminum wrench set that is a fixed position for your fittings that you're gonna be installing. It helps not to mar up the surface of your aluminum fittings. And also a set of vise jaws that are made out of aluminum are always a nice handy thing to have. They have these nice cutouts in them where you can clamp the fitting into the vise. I'm gonna go ahead and prep the fitting by pulling off the collar like that. And we're gonna go ahead and crimp this into our vise. Okay, so one of the other things I picked up at Crown Performance today was our new clutch line. The old one had definitely seen better days. It looks like this, and in the factory configuration, it's got a pretty heavy kink in 2 directions on it. And over time, it's not abnormal for a rubber line like this to sort of just dry out and crack. So we wanted to get that replaced, being that we want this car to see some performance driving, and we don't want the clutch to fail. So went ahead and picked up this nice unit from Crown Performance and adapted it to our slave cylinder here and down to the factory line, which seems pretty adequate. Bends aren't too tight, they're nice and round, and that should suit us just well. And it's not going to be susceptible to any plumping or getting out of shape under heavy pedal pressure and things like that. So very happy with this. It's a good unit and will suit us quite nicely. All right, well, in my excitement to show you guys how to build an AN line, I totally left out the fact that I need to include our fuel pressure regulator and our fuel filter. We do need to put our fuel filter in line that we've received from GReddy as well. This is a dual stage filter. Comes with a washable filter element inside that you can actually rinse out and reuse, so you're not buying new filters all the time. You pop the end cap off. Inside the aluminum housing, you have a metal filter, which is really nice. This is the same exact filter we use on the 240, and we also use on the Bad Apple when we built it. It's already threaded on both ends so that you can add your own AN fittings to this canister. So I know whenever I do an oil change on the Bad Apple, I go ahead and pop that thing open and check for any debris and rinse it out and put it back together. It's super easy to do, as long as you put it in somewhere that's pretty easy to access. So I gotta go ahead and find a place to mount this where we can get to it. And then I've also set up our fuel pressure regulator. We've got a GReddy fuel pressure gauge that I've clocked to 40 PSI straight up and down, which is traditionally about where we want the fuel pressure to be, so the line should be straight up and down. I can go ahead and mount this up. At that point I can measure for our fuel lines and remake those couple lines I need to make. Should be able to knock that one out lickety split. All right, so we're still sorting through this fuel system. I've had to move the fuel regulator off of the strut tower and up to the firewall. And I also already hung the DW fuel filter here on the back side of the firewall. If you look straight up, you can see where I put the fuel pressure regulator. And Ricky's here now. We're replacing the oil pan. It was pretty well beat up, so Ricky's doing that now.
All right, guys, so as Mickey told you, I just pulled out the stock oil pan for this thing. I'm gonna replace it with a brand new one. And right now I just got finished cleaning the bottom block where the oil pan's gonna sit at. I'm gonna re-clean the new one with some acetone or brake cleaner, and then I'm gonna apply some RTV on it and just lay it in there. I'm sure you guys seen this plenty of times before, so I'll just put you guys on the tripod. Alright guys, let me give you a quick update. The oil pan has already been mounted, all bolted up, torqued down. Shifting cables have already been installed as well. Next is gonna be the axle, spindle, and brake system are gonna go in. Alright guys, let me show you what I got done so far. The Axles are both in, the spindles, the subframe, the brakes are all put together. Next thing is gonna be the sway bar, but unfortunately I ran out of time. Here's to Mickey.
The next day.
All right, guys, well, it's the next day. I gotta keep plugging along. I started on the plumbing yesterday, and I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. What I'm gonna be doing today is actually making a replacement for this grill. Now, this grill actually goes inside the engine bay on the other side of this vent. So basically down here. And essentially what that is for is to keep debris from coming up inside the vent into the engine bay. We're gonna be getting rid of that altogether and actually just shelving that part in lieu of a custom part that, as you saw, I traced onto our sheet metal over there, which is gonna then house our oil cooler. So effectively we'll be drawing direct cold air while the car is moving over the oil cooler inside the engine bay, which is pretty rad. So basically the cooler is gonna go like this on this plate once it's mounted. And one really cool thing about this oil cooler from Hayden Automotive is that it has flanges here to mount. Now, I've seen the other cooler kit on the market, which is from our friend Wilhelm Raceworks. His sits more like this, and it has an L bracket that runs between these 2 feet. The Hayden cooler, having these feet over here, allows us to actually simplify things and just put a nut and bolt through there, and we will be mounted nice and easy, no L brackets needed. So we're gonna go ahead and just cut this out around the marker area, and then we'll mount our oil cooler. We'll drill our holes to mount it into the chassis. We're gonna get a lot of oil cooling out of this, and that's exciting. I love oil coolers and power steering coolers, all that stuff on all my builds, so this is a neat one. I've never gotten to put one in the back before. So I'm gonna go ahead and toss this sheet metal into our Eastwood shear brake and roller. This is an awesome 3-part tool that you guys have seen us use previously, but this thing gets us out of a lot of pinches because it does 3 jobs in one. It's pretty neat. You actually just lift this up and you've got a slip roll under there, which is pretty cool. And you've got the shear and brake here. There's the bender and there's the brake. So very cool stuff. Shout out to Eastwood for helping us out. This 3-in-1 tool really saves a lot of space in the shop, putting it all on one bench, and allows us to do some cool stuff. Alright, so I've gone ahead and roughed in our shape here. Now I'll go over to the Eastwood shear that we have on the other end of the bench and sort of cut this in a little further. All right, so I've got it roughed in. I'm gonna go ahead and use my 3M little wheel, whizzy wheel I call it, to clean up all the edges and shape the cutouts where the bolt holes are gonna go. All right, now we've got our shape. Now I just gotta go make some holes. It's gonna get 3 tabs, and then we can mount the cooler to this, and we'll be solid. By the way, you guys are probably wondering, this is a pretty thin material. Doesn't need to be super heavy. We're building the race version. All right, I've gone ahead and skipped ahead a step. I already went ahead and mounted the cooler onto here and drilled the holes where it's gonna mount. And if you can see, I'm not sure, I've already scribed the line, and that's the area I'm gonna cut out to allow the air to flow through the side of the car, through the cooler, and into the engine bay. So now I gotta go ahead and cut this out. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill 4 holes, 1 on each corner, so I can get my radius on each corner, and then I'll go ahead and cut that out. There it is, there's our hole cut out, and now we can actually mount the oil cooler on here. want to show you guys how this actually looks up in here. It's pretty cool, hard to see, I guess. So there you have our oil cooler, you know, prior to painting everything and getting it all blacked out. But the location is absolutely perfect, exactly where I wanted it. And now I'm actually gonna move on to doing an oil change. And I wanted to show you guys this because I think the V6 motor that we're using, the 2GRFE, has a really cool oil filter location. It's actually down here by the oil pan. I've already removed it, but essentially you just have a filter element that goes in here, which we've ordered a new one, and this just screws in. Really cool concept. I like that it's easily accessible at the bottom. I did go ahead and throw this in our parts washer and got it all cleaned up. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a new filter element and a new gasket on here and pop this thing back together. All right, so since we made it a different transmission to this V6 engine, we use our stock transmission, as you guys probably already know. There's no cover for the inspection plate area. This is the old inspection plate cover off of our transmission, but it no longer fits with the V6 mounted to it. So what I did was I went ahead and made a CAD plate here, cardboard aided design, fitted it up to our old cover, and I'm gonna go ahead and use a piece out of this, and this will bolt right back on. All right, well that was easy. I just threw it through our bandsaw really quick, went ahead and whipped up the plate. So having that cover on will allow no dirt or debris to get into the clutch area. And then if we need to pull it off to inspect anything, we can. So I've gone ahead and thrown a coat of paint on my mount for the oil cooler. So while that's drying, I've actually moved on to the gas pedal situation in the MR2. I'm not sure if we've told you guys, I think one of the videos we went over it a little bit, but the Frankenstein Motorworks guys makes a pretty cool little billet adapter plate and use a drive-by-wire pedal from, we have one from a 012 Camry, but could be many different Toyotas, I believe. And it has the wiring pigtail. We're gonna have to run wires back to our throttle body, and we are gonna be converting this car to throttle by wire. Went ahead and threw a little Downstar hardware on there, mounted the 12 Camry pedal to the Frankenstein Motorworks pedal assembly, which effectively makes it mount in the location of our factory gas pedal. So, what are you doing back there, buddy? So essentially, that plate is an adapter that mounts to the firewall where this one used to mount, and allows us to bolt the drive-by-wire pedal to it. So we're gonna go ahead and toss this in. We're gonna leave the pigtail on here so it doesn't get lost. And then when we go ahead and do our wiring, we'll be running wires from here back to our throttle body. Right there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires. And this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires. Imagine that. We may be running a direct set of 6 wires. We gotta look into the wiring a little bit, but might be routing those through the cabin back to the throttle body. All right, well, the oil cooler is now mounted. As you guys can see, it's tucked in there real nice and ready to be plumbed. So now all I gotta do is connect A to B, B to A, and we've got a functional oil cooler. Well, I'm getting a knife because we gotta cut open these overnight parts from Japan. The homies over at GReddy actually had an SW20 exhaust on the shelf for us. We've got an aftermarket mid-pipe from our overpipe from Wilhelm Raceworks. We're hoping that this is gonna bolt up to that. Damn, bro.
What do you got here? Ooh, yes.
Always love the exhaust on these cars. It's fairly exposed.
Yeah, and they look really sick from behind. Yeah.
Cast flange with the GReddy logo. Oh, that's such a nice piece. See both of these cans hanging down.
Oh, dude, that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's literally, we just gotta clock that and that's it.
All right, guys, it's the next day, and I've already begun to tackle our exhaust situation, which I showed you guys previously in this video. The Wilhelm Raceworks underpipe looks like it's gonna bolt up directly to the rear section with a little bit of modification. So what's really cool is we're gonna be able to take this 4-cylinder exhaust, modify our Wilhelm Raceworks overpipe, midpipe, whatever it's called, to fit. So I'm gonna go ahead and start on that work now. I'm basically gonna chop it off nice and straight. We'll take it over to the bench, grind it nice and smooth, and then I'll have Evan throw some TIG welds on it, and we'll bolt this bad boy up. Boom, bam. All right, cuts, yeah, pretty straight, I guess. Straight enough. We'll go ahead and run this on our grinding wheel. We've got to square this up anyway because this was at a funky angle and we've got to get it kicked up. We'll go ahead and clean up that and we'll weld it right back onto here, right where we need it. We'll get this thing hung up. All right, so fast forward a little while. Okay, so the GReddy exhaust, as you guys saw or may not have seen, it comes as two components. You have the rear muffler section, which I have hanging here, and there was a mid pipe that hooked up to the exhaust manifold of the 4-cylinder engine that's supposed to be in this car. Well, as you guys know, we've put a V6 in here, and we've got this beautiful Wilhelm Racing stainless steel overpipe. But as you can see right now, we actually have a GReddy flange against a GReddy flange. This should be Wilhelm Racing, and this should be GReddy. What we did was I actually picked a weld back here above the subframe in the Wilhelm Racing part. I actually cut his flange off because his flange is meant to mount to a different type of exhaust. And we feel it brings a little bit of JDM to the car. I cut off the front section of the mid pipe that we were going to get rid of, and I've mated it basically to the Wilhelm part. Our flanges mount up perfectly, and now I can have Evan just TIG weld this onto here, and then now we actually have a GReddy exhaust that bolts up to a Wilhelm Racing overpipe for a V6 Toyota engine.
Good job, Mickey, prepping that pipe, and I welded this up here. So we cut the Wilhelm Raceworks pipe here, welded that on, and now we are running the GReddy, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful exhausts for the SW20. Just the twin canisters kind of facing sideways and angled. I think it's just such a good look. I think it's super, super cool. We were able to use this exhaust. So huge shout out to GReddy. I know we had to cut it up a little bit.
All right, guys, well, that's gonna close out today's video. We've got our fuel system done. We've got our oiling system done. The last fluid system that we need to finish up is our water system. So we're gonna go ahead and toss the radiator in the next video and get that all plumbed up. The car's on the ground. We've got a little bit of wiring left to do, and we can fire this bad boy up. If you guys are in town this weekend, you can see the car and us at MR2 Assemble. Look it up in the description below. So stay tuned to the next video, guys, where we're gonna get this thing fired up.
So we hope you guys enjoyed today's YouTube video, but before we go, I want to tell you about Squarespace. So we know a lot of people who are watching this right now are in the process or want to start their own business. And one of the most important things is having a really strong and professional website. Now, thankfully, we've partnered up with Squarespace, and I'm super excited because I wish we had discovered Squarespace sooner. They have really professional templates that allow you to create beautiful and really awesome websites from scratch by yourself. You don't have to hire a graphic designer or a website designer, and it can save you a lot of money and time when you're trying to launch your own business. The other thing that's really cool is they have a really integrated and efficient email marketing system. So you can send email campaigns to your clients, your customers, or even just leads through your website, and everything is integrated into the Squarespace system. The other thing I really like is how awesome the support is. So not only do they have the typical, FAQ and online documentation for how to set up the site and how to use it, but they also have a live chat system. If you just can't find what you're looking for, hit them up on the live chat, get your questions answered right away, and start building your website and start launching it even sooner. So if anyone who's watching this is interested, use our promo code throtl. You can save yourself 10% off of your first purchase, and that way when you check out, you can save yourself a couple bucks. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one.